Hey, what's up, world? How are you? I am running a little bit late today. It's been a bit of a crazy day at uni, and I've just rushed back to the car to do this live video. I've got a really interesting topic for you, but I'll just give it a few minutes to see if anyone wants to hop on and join in the discussion. So I hope everyone else has been having a good day. I have been having a very intellectual day. So talking all about statistics and getting ready for my quantitative analysis for my PhD. So it's all exciting, but very, it's all in my head. Anyway, so it'll be nice to kind of get into into my heart. Like my birth work, I feel like is more emotional. It's more people-centered rather than numbers and all of that. Hey Janet, thanks for joining. I'm going to start in a few minutes. I'm just giving everyone a bit of time to see that I'm live. Hope you've had a good day. Let me know in the chat if you've had a good day. All right, so today my topic is, I've called it Birth is Not a Marathon. And I thought that might get a few people's attention because this is a really common analogy that people use about birth, and I totally get the sentiment behind it. We'll probably talk, I'll talk quickly about why people might refer to birth as a marathon. Okay, so first of all, I guess the first thing that I think of when I hear the word marathon is long. So people are often talking about, birth as a marathon because they're preparing women for the possibility that birth may be long. And I guess in one sense it's long in that it's not usually 5 minutes. So even if it's relatively quick, that could mean a few hours. And of course you hear of the occasional birth where it's someone has like a 15-minute labor, but they are rare. So that's the first thing that I think of when I hear marathon, and it's also, I think, a big reason why people call birth a marathon. But also, and this is the positive side of calling birth a marathon, that is that it's something that when people run a marathon, they're actually, they're not scared about the marathon. They're not afraid to do it. It's actually something exciting for them, and it's something that they've prepared for and they've trained for. And so in that respect, when people are saying birth is like a marathon, it's an encouragement or a call to action to do some work, do some preparation for birth, so that birth can be a positive experience, the way people experience a marathon when they're really into running. Now, this is not, I'm not into running, so this is probably where my bias shows that I'm not all that keen on running. And so I've always had a little bit of a problem with this analogy. And I think I've sort of hinted at the first issue in when I said that the first thing I think of is that a marathon is often a really long, arduous journey. And maybe for someone who runs marathons regularly, who has a positive association with marathons, they might see this analogy as really positive because they're like, yeah, I can do a marathon. It's so fun. I'm really passionate about running. I'm passionate about my training and preparing. And so it might have that really positive connotations for them. But for the rest of us who see like running as like I don't want to run, and certainly not for a marathon, like all I can think of is like being out of breath and not being able to breathe. So so for those of us who don't have a positive association with marathons, would see it as kind of like as a very overwhelming thought that birth is like a marathon. Oh my goodness, are you really? Because I don't like marathons, so this means I'm not going to like birth, and I'm not going to like giving birth, and it can't possibly be a positive experience for me. So the first thing I want to ask you, for those who are on, is what do you think of when you hear the word marathon? Do you think of positive things or neutral things or negative things, or like what do you think of? So if you want to participate, just jot it in the chat box and let us know what you think of when you hear the word marathon. Do you think, yay, I want to run a marathon? Or do you think, oh my gosh, I do not want to run a marathon? So let me know in the chat box. So for me, I just have a lot of negative associations with it, although I do see the comparison, like the positive side of things is that it's something you can prepare for. It's something that's not overly, like it's not extreme. So it's not like swimming with sharks or something completely crazy and terrifying. Well, it would be terrifying for me. See, there'd be people who would love swimming with sharks. but for me, even though I'm not a fan of running marathons, and I certainly wouldn't put my hand up to run one anytime soon, it's sort of a negative thing, but it's not like a terrifying thing. So the first reason why I think comparing birth to a marathon is all sorts of wrong is that it has these more on the negative side, these negative connotations, that it's long, that it's something where it's uncomfortable, it's just and if someone really doesn't like running, then they're going to have more negative associations with it. Okay, so the second thing is that it actually has a really, really different energy. So the other thing that I think of when I think of marathons is I think of the streets lined with, the banisters, to the barricades to stop people being on the street, because that's where the runners are going to be running. And there's people all lined up along the way. And what are they doing? Does anyone want to chip in? If you want to chip in, just type into the chat box and we'll kind of talk that way. But basically, the runners, like, they're running along and the people on the sides are doing what? They are cheering. They're going, yeah, you can do it. So, Krista, run, you can do it. And it's like got this really high energy kind of feeling about the entire environment. And I think this sets up birth partners to come into the birth space with the wrong energy. Because if someone, I don't know if I'm skipping ahead here, but let's just go with it. So if someone's in labor, cheering them on is not really the right energy. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so let's see. In the first stage of labor, you are basically waiting for your body to open. Okay, so we're having these contractions or waves. Okay, some people call them waves or surges. And you're having those contractions and they're coming and going. Okay, now when a contraction's on, for many women it's quite an uncomfortable feeling. It's very intense. And so if someone is next to you going, come on Krista, you can do it, and that's not actually going to help you push through that contraction, because that has a really kind of tensing up kind of feeling. When you have to push through in a marathon, and like I said, I don't run marathons, so I'm speaking a bit from ignorance here, but I'm thinking back to high school when we were made to do PE, and when we had to do those cross country runs, and you were like pushing through the pain. Like for me, it wasn't so much painful, but I found it really uncomfortable when I felt out of breath. I hated that feeling. And so I was like pushing through that feeling, and I was like just egging myself on, just going, I can do this. And it has a really like tensing up your body and giving it all you've got. And if you think about what hormone is used to give you that extra energy, does anyone know what it is? It starts with A. It's the hormone that's used when we need that extra burst of energy, and it's called adrenaline. And so when we are doing something really physical, our body is pumping us full of adrenaline. Pumping. Adrenaline is going to give us the energy in our arms and our legs to run that marathon. And so as people are cheering and they've got this high energy, like, you can do it, it's like even their voices are very tense, like in an excited way, but it's a completely different energy to what is more helpful in birth. So let me tell you what's more helpful in birth. So as a doula, I've attended many births, and there's one thing in common with them, And that is that as a doula, I provide encouragement and I provide reassurance. And I don't provide that encouragement by going, hey Janet, you can do it. Come on, you can get through this contraction. Go, go, go. That's not going to help someone get through it. And sorry to use you as an example there, Janet. I hope you don't mind. And so when someone's having a contraction or a wave or a surge, my tone, my body language is completely at a different energy, energy level. It's, hey Janet, you've got this. You're doing so well. Deeply breathe. That's it. And I'll do it with them. And I'll breathe in deeply with them and I'll breathe out with them. If they moan or if they need some encouragement, like some modeling, that I might like model moaning or making an ah sound on their exhale, just to help them feel as relaxed as possible. And I'm already feeling more relaxed talking about it. I'm like getting into the zone. Whereas before, apart from having rushed to the car from uni to start the the Facebook Live today, but and describing the marathon, like that's all this, the energy's up here. But when we start talking in these softer tones, our shoulders soften, our voice softens, so we're speaking softer, but you might also notice my words are coming out slower. And so all of that gives a completely different energy to the space, to the birth space, to the room, and to the people in the room. And that is the energy we need in a birth space, because birth is about surrendering to the body, the process that the body needs to go through to open. And the process does not require adrenaline. So if we've got adrenaline when the body's trying to open, it's going to actually tense the body up, and it's going to make it harder for the body to open, and it's actually going to make it more painful, which then slows labor down. It slows up the opening process. So that's just no good on a couple of fronts. It's not fun making birth more painful, and it's not fun making birth longer. So having that completely different energy, having that tenseness, is going to actually make birth less comfortable and longer. But when we have this surrendering to birth, and when I say surrender, I really want to differentiate this from surrendering to a person or surrendering to a system. We are not surrendering to anything external. We are surrendering to ourselves. We are surrendering our thinking brain. We are surrendering it. We are giving away our control to our body, to our primal body and our primal brain, and we're saying, okay, you can drive now. I'm going to switch off, and I'm just going to go into instinctive primal mode. And that is a really, animalistic kind of place to be, like mindset to be in. And that has, so we've got this surrendering feeling, which means we're turning off our mind, we're turning off our thinking, and we're letting our body do the driving. And our body knows what it's doing, so it's got this covered. But what's not guaranteed is how fast it will do it or how slow it will do it. But what I can, hey Kylie, what I can guarantee is that when we surrender and turn off that neocortex and really relax as much as we can during those contractions, it makes it more comfortable, which means that it's less relevant how long it is, because we are more comfortable. And it's something you could use. I know some people have a hard time with using the word comfortable in relation to labor. So let me put it in maybe a more neutral term. It's more manageable. It's more bearable, although I think that has some negative connotations. So let's stick with manageable. So the sensations are manageable because we've got a more relaxed feeling, like we're relaxing the mind and body so that the birth process can just do what it needs to do. And so if I just come back to my topic here, that birth is not a marathon, what I mean by that is, first of all, it has the wrong energy. A marathon has the wrong energy. We're not cheering women on. We're not cheering, cheering has this high energy, adrenaline, pumped kind of feeling about it. And when someone's in labor, they don't want any of that. That's not going to help. They need to be quietening their mind. They need to be relaxing their body physically and relaxing their mind mentally. And that's going to have a much better effect at making birth more comfortable or more manageable, if you don't like the word comfortable, and also making it probably making it faster. But we don't want to be kind of dwelling on how long it's taking or how short it's taking, because again, that's getting into our analytical brain. We're really surrendering to the process, and by that surrendering, we're making it more comfortable, more manageable, and therefore how long it takes is less relevant. So that's the first reason. And I kind of hinted at the second reason, that to me, a marathon really implies that it's something really long and arduous, and that isn't necessarily the case. And I'm not denying that many women have long labors, but we are forgetting a whole cohort of women who have had shorter labors. And at what point do we call it a long labor, and at what point do we call it a short labor? That's such a subjective thing. And so I feel that the word marathon is really setting women up to go, oh, birth is going to be long, it's going to be hard, it's going to be something just really unpleasant, and most essentially it's going to be long. And so people get in this mindset, oh, how am I going to deal with this long labor? And so they're going into birth with this really negative mindset, which makes it more painful. So it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. So anyway, that's probably about all I can say without getting some interaction. So I'd love for your thoughts, for anyone that's watching. If you want to kind of give me a hey, how you going in the chat box. Let me know if this is making sense to you, if you sort of have any questions about this, or if you have any thoughts, like what was your experience like, and how do you feel about the word marathon? Does it have positive connotations to you, or does it have negative connotations? Or how are you feeling about it? So I'll just see if anyone wants to chat, but otherwise just give it a few minutes. But yeah, it's something that I feel is really perpetuated in the birth world. And when not everyone's familiar with that term, the birth world is kind of just referring to people working in the birth space and the birth community. So people who are working with women who are preparing to give birth, who are pregnant, or who are giving birth, so doulas and midwives and doctors, and even those allied health professionals who work with women in their preparation. So they might be providing consults or services like massage therapists, or something during their pregnancy. And so we use this language about birth being a marathon, and I think it's something that can be, whilst I think it has a nice sentiment, like I think the meaning or what's intended is nice, it sort of has these unintended consequences, or these unintended connotations to describing birth as a marathon that really sets us up for seeing birth as something negative, something really, really hard. And everyone's birth experience is unique, and everyone's birth experience needs to be validated. Like I'm not denying that some people have experienced birth as hard, and birth as painful, and birth as overwhelming, and birth as really, really uncomfortable, or birth as really, really physical. But it's not always. So that's the first thing, that the really important thing to remember is it's not always. So why are we trying to put everyone in this box and saying, because I've heard all these stories and I've experienced a long labor or a this or a that means everyone on the planet must have had the same experience as me? That's really quite narrow. And so I think it's really helpful for women who are pregnant to recognize the varied experiences that people have. And those experiences are like, some people, well, maybe not literally sneeze, but they literally have a baby within a few minutes. That obviously that's rare, but it has happened. So why are we denying that that's even a possibility? And then there's those who have had a fast labor. They may have described it as fast, and so that might be anywhere from like half an hour to maybe 3 hours. They might have gone, yeah, that was a fast labor. And then when we talk about length of labor, even 4, 5, 6, 8 hours, that doesn't necessarily mean that's all active labor. So that means a fair portion of that might be the early phases of labor, where it's a lot more mild contractions and just the body warming up. So we've got this whole minefield of different ways that people express and describe their labor, and also this whole variance of how people experience their labor. So calling it a marathon is like saying, well, all of these short births and easy births and however those other ways that people describe birth that don't seem to fit this analogy of a marathon, all of those become irrelevant and invisible. And that's what I don't want to happen. I don't want us to be forgetting that birth can be a whole lot of different things. So let's keep an open mind. And so that's the first thing. That's the first reason why calling it a marathon, I think, is all sorts of wrong. It really sets us up for thinking birth can only be this one thing. And then the second thing is, a marathon has a way different energy. It is an adrenaline-filled experience. It is something where someone has to dig deep in a physical level and a mental level, which again, that sort of has some like similarities to birth, but it has an energy up here, like I'm gonna push through this, I'm gonna keep my legs running. And you need adrenaline to do that. You cannot float through a you know what I mean? So when you're running, it's like gritting your teeth, and the people are like screaming your name and going, you can do it. It's got this high energy, tension filled, like really, and it's all about your arms and legs as well. So it's like the adrenaline is giving you energy to run. Whereas in birth, we need to bring it down. And I'm already feeling better because I'm starting to talk more calmly. We need to bring the energy down. It's completely different to a marathon. In a marathon, if I was at the sidelines doing what I do in birth, I'd be going, hey Krista, you're doing great. And it wouldn't make sense in the context of a marathon. So if someone was running past, they wouldn't even hear what I'm saying because they would have already run past by the time I finish my sentence. So that's why it's got this high energy, because it's fast paced and it's something that is, adrenaline filled. But birth, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. And I really mean that. It is so different to a marathon in that sense, that it has a different energy, it has different hormones, and we are talking about a space and an experience where the encouragement needs to be at a kind of lower frequency, a gentle, a loving, a reassuring. We don't reassure people when they're on a marathon. We cheer them. We are like, I guess you could say encourage, but it's more than encourage. So the only word I can think of at the moment is cheer, but I'm sure there's some other adjective that would be suitable. But in a birth, we reassure and we prompt, and we what are some other words that I might have written down? Yeah, it's just got that peaceful, that comforting kind of energy. So you can do it, you're doing beautifully. That's one of my common things I'll say, like beautiful. And because that word to me has this really reassuring, emotional, kind of connective energy to it. And so for me, birth is about connection. It's not about cheering someone on and getting them pumped full of adrenaline, because that's actually making them more like that's actually making the experience more painful if their body is then starting to respond to the high energy by producing adrenaline. So nobody wants that. Nobody wants their birth to be longer and more painful. So we need to say goodbye to adrenaline and hello to all the other birth hormones like oxytocin, like endorphins and melatonin. We need those and those sorts of hormones. And I just thought of another word, it just popped into my mind, soothing. There's a whole different energy. It's completely soothing and comforting and relaxing. And so that's where we want birth to be. So I know I've rambled a little here. I've just been trying to really emphasize the point to make sure I've made it clear. And, you know, for those watching the replay, I would love to get the conversation going. It's such an interesting topic. The way we all use language. Language is like a minefield in the, you know, different words mean different things to different people. It may be that they've had an experience with, like a specific experience that makes them remember that word, like associate that word with something positive or negative. So someone might have had an amazing experience with you know, running a marathon, and so they have all these beautiful happy thoughts when they think of that. And so in that sense, I'm not here to say like 100% like you can't use this word or you can't use that word, because everyone's an individual. But what I can say and what I'm saying is that overall, marathon, in my opinion, has a much different energy to what we want to introduce to the birth space. We want it to be relaxing. We want it to be calm. We want it to be encouraging, but in a really soft, reassuring way. And so that's my 2 cents worth on birth not being a marathon. And so I'd love to hear more from everyone else and see what you think. And if you happen to be a birth worker, let us know, you know, how is this sitting with you? How is this feeling? Like if you've used that analogy, and if you're a pregnant woman, how is this feeling? Have you heard that analogy before? And did it sort of make sense before? And, you know, does what I'm saying make sense? How is it kind of sitting with you now that we've kind of unpacked it a little and seen, you know, the true comparison between a birth and a marathon? So I'd love to hear from you, and if you haven't already, like my page, come join us in my Facebook group. It's completely free, and I'd love to help all women to have a bold, beautiful birth. I'll see you next time. Bye.